Well, good evening, everybody. It's lovely to see you. And tonight we've got slightly different people, which is fantastic, because unfortunately Carl can't make it tonight, and neither can Matt. So, Councillor Rob Cooper, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Amanda. My name is Councillor Rob Cooper. I represent Chaddesden Ward in Derby City. I've also been the lead councillor since the COVID-19 pandemic started on the response to COVID-19 in Chaddesden. So I've been doing quite a lot of hands-on work in the community with the amazing team in Chaddesden, but also as well, absolutely humbling to see the response from the residents, not only in Chaddesden, but around the city.
Brilliant. Lovely to have you here tonight, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
And Gavin.
Hi, Amanda. My name's Gavin Boyle, and I'm the Chief Executive at the University Hospitals of Derby and Burton.
It's lovely to have you back, Gavin. I'm really looking forward to getting an update in terms of what's happening. And of course, you've got some nice new benches, I know, as well.
Oh yes, we've got fabulous. So yes, so we I think it came out of the last conversation actually. So the War Memorial Village, Derbyshire kind of donated a fabulous bench, which we've got pride of place right at the front of Royal Derby. So very, very nice.
Yeah, really beautiful. I've sat on it. It's very comfy as well. So that's great. And then just to say, Sophie, just a little bit about who you are, please.
I'm Sophie. I work with Amanda in the constituency office in Derby North, and I'll be asking the questions tonight.
Wonderful. Right. Well, with no further ado, Sophie, let's ask the first one.
So we've got, with all the talk about hitting a second peak, what measures do you think we need to have in place?
So, Rob, shall we come to you first on this?
Yeah, I think with we a lot of people are saying that there may be a second peak and things could get back to how they were. Obviously, it's not really my field of understanding. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor, but it is concerning areas like Leicester are just down the road from us, where we've seen the whole of the city back into lockdown. There's not a great deal of difference in demographics, particularly. It's quite a similar city in many ways, and it is quite concerning that we could have local spikes like that. And like I say, it is quite close to us, and I think that's of concern to many people in the community.
No, thank you. I'm obviously, I've got some views on this actually, but Gavin, perhaps you could tell us about the reality that sits behind this. That would be really helpful.
Well, I think it is it's a very real concern. You may have seen a report by the Academy of Medical Sciences that was published on Tuesday of this week, which was really explored a range of scenarios about what a second peak might look like, and if you overlaid that over things like the regular kind of winter pressures or influenza, etc. So I think the potential challenge is very, very real. And when I think back to, I don't know, about maybe the end of March, within the hospital, we were all talking about, having a really big peak of COVID-19, and we did all sorts of things to prepare for that in terms of creating capacity within our hospitals. And the good news is that we didn't actually need all of that capacity, because if you remember at the time, we talked about flattening the curve. We've got to flatten the curve, and do you know what we did? So as a society, I mean, our response to lockdown and the measures that were put in place really did do exactly that. And what that meant was that the NHS had sufficient capacity to cope. So although it's been a really challenging time, we've never been in the position that we've seen in other parts of the world, in India and I think in Italy as well, where these local services were overwhelmed. But clearly, when I look forward to the winter, and I look at the Academy of Medical Sciences report, the potential impact of a second peak is really considerable. I suppose the point I'm making is that the measures that we took as a society back in the end of March, we need to be thinking about that going forward. Now, I know there's a lot of enthusiasm to get back to normality and to try and get the economy running and all of that, and that's all absolutely really important stuff. But things like social distancing and hand washing and face masks, all of these things, are going to be really important. We need to keep it going in terms of, those basic measures to try and help minimise a second peak if we get one.
And do you think it is likely that we get a second peak?
Oh gosh, that's a really tough question.
I don't know the answer.
Well, I think. Well, I don't either. But I think But I know people who do know more things about more about these things than I do. And I think if you talk to our public health colleagues, epidemiologists, I think people would say that it's probably more likely than not. I think what's not known is the size of what the size of that impact's likely to be. And that report that I mentioned, that's what it was about. It was trying to model different scenarios. But I think we're not out of the woods yet. Is my honest view.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. I was at University of Birmingham a couple of weeks ago looking at the antibody test. And and it's there's so much effort going into trying to find a vaccine, looking at therapeutics, looking at ways. There's all these different things that clearly are being done. But ultimately, and I come back, I think, what Rob that you've made and Gavin, we just have to be really sensible and follow the guidelines that have always been there actually, which is make sure you wash your hands, make sure that you observe this thing where you can, all of that. Is really still the most sensible advice, isn't it? Until, in my view, we get a vaccine.
I mean, a really sobering thought. Sorry, I'm turning into Mr. Doom and Gloom tonight, really.
No, that's fine.
but quite a sobering thought is the antibody test is not widely available to members of the public at the moment. So basically, if you've got symptoms, you get it's a PCR test, the swab, but that's for people who've got symptoms. So everybody who needs that can clearly have that. But the antibody test really just tells you whether you had the virus, you had the disease in the past. It doesn't really help with your clinical management now.
No.
But we are testing NHS staff, so it's really part of this sort of trying to understand the virus better. So we've tested about 10,000 of our staff. So if you forget there for a minute that they're NHS people, that's just 10,000 working age adults within Derbyshire, Staffordshire. I mean, the numbers of people who are positive for the antibody test is about 22%.
Wow.
So if you think about the challenge we've had over the last 3 months, that challenge has been generated by an infection rate of about 20% in terms of the general population. Now, I think the jury's out about whether having had COVID actually gives you any immunity. But let's, for argument's sake, assume that it does and be optimistic. There's still an awful lot of people out there who've not had COVID and are therefore, potentially still at risk.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a bit of a depressing message, but I think the concerns about second waves are genuine. I don't think it's just scaremongering or just trying to, I don't know, worry people, but I think it is a genuine thing.
Yeah. I think, we do have to make sure we do take, follow the precautions. Rob, anything else to add to that? I think Ian's coming to join us as well, actually, in a minute.
Yeah, I think what Gavin said is, it's really interesting to hear. And he works in that field and he's very high up in that field. And I think when it comes to the immunity from COVID, if you've had it, there is starting to be a lot more dialogue and understanding about that. And you do hear some stories coming out that might be immunity 3 months or 6 months. And I think that's where the likelihood of the second wave coming in, and also as well, if you can get it again, I'm not an expert, but if you do, we have seen incidents around the world where people have had it again. Will they be hit harder because their immunity has been hurt and compromised, and their general health? Because I think one of the things that hasn't been discussed during the whole COVID-19 crisis is those that have recovered. What is their life like after they've recovered? And I think it's really important that a lot of research has gone into, those that have had really hard symptoms of COVID and how that affects their lives and what pressures that puts on their families and their friends, and also the support network, such as the local councils and the NHS trusts.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing, and I want to move on to the next question in a minute, but Gavin, again, you probably know better than I do. But my understanding is, you know, I mean, obviously we're seeking a vaccine, looking at therapeutics. But when people do unfortunately lose their lives to COVID-19, it's actually it's organ shutdown. Is that right? Is that what happens?
Yeah, I mean it's I mean it's an interesting disease process, because for the vast majority of people it is a mild illness, you know, that's for sure. But if you become seriously unwell with it, it is an extremely serious condition. And I mean, as you know, I mean within this organisation alone, we've seen 500 patients since the end of March to, you know, right up to date really, who've passed away as a result of COVID-19. So it can be a terrible illness. So I mean, clearly it affects the lungs, but it actually affects, you know, other systems, other organs, and, you know, people succumb for a variety of reasons. It isn't just the impact on their lungs. It's, you know, their general immunity is reduced, and they're susceptible to other things as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what we don't realise, that I think again, the ventilators, which are obviously key to breathing, they help with the breathing, but unfortunately the disease actually spreads to the other parts of the body.
It's interesting, but up until very recently, there was no treatment for COVID-19. So when somebody's on a ventilator, all we were doing is supporting them, hoping their own, you know, their own kind of immune system kicked in and they recovered, and thankfully, you know, many do. But interestingly, so there's the National Recovery Trial, and you might have heard that a drug called dexamethasone, which is quite a common steroidal, we use it for all sorts of things actually, but actually is effective, is an effective treatment. So I think that's really good news. What you might not realize is that UHDB and clinicians in UHDB were part of that national trial. So we're actively involved in the work around dexamethasone.
Yeah, it's been quite interesting when you talk about the trial as well, because I think not the challenge, it's a good challenge to have, but actually finding patients to use it on it, because you have to make sure that you have the right people to try it, because the trials aren't that, you do need patients to try it on, don't you, as well?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there's obviously a lot of focus on vaccines at the moment, and I think there are probably about 30 odd different research groups active across the world on vaccines, and obviously we've got the Oxford group in the UK. So I'm a bit of a pessimist today, but I'm reasonably optimistic about a virus. But Rob, it was exactly what you said though. It's not a vaccine like you know, you have I don't know, measles or something, and you know, you have it and then you're protected. I think at best, given the nature of the virus, I think you might have a vaccine which might protect you for, you know, 6 months, a year, you know, a round of, you know, the sort of cycle. Like a flu jab. Yeah, very much so, yeah.
So, Gavin, SARS happened 18 years ago, and I don't think we've got a vaccine for that, have we? You know, it's quite, I don't know how similar the viruses are, but, you know, that's always the nagging feeling. And like you say, I don't want to be pessimistic, but the nagging feeling in me is, if we've not managed to get a vaccine for SARS, which was quite, from what I understand, and it's very, I'm not an expert at all, but it's, you know, I'm quite concerned at that.
No, I agree, and well, I mean, you know, another example, the common cold is a coronavirus, and we don't have a vaccine for that. So I don't think it's as, you know, I don't think it's as simple as, you know, we need a vaccine. It's really easy. We do it for flu every year. I think it is more complex, but I mean, looking at some of the reports from the different groups that are working on a vaccine, I have got a degree of optimism about that, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see. It's certainly not certain.
No, thank you for that. Do you know, I always love talking to you, Gavin, because you're not pessimistic. I just think you're actually just saying it as it is, and I think it reminds us all that you know, we're able to go out a little bit more. The roads are certainly fuller. All the things, we feel as though we're getting back to normality, but it's not a normal world we live in anymore. And I think that's the, you know, really important to remind people about that. Sophie, do we have a next question?
We do, yeah. So we've got, what is the current impact of COVID on regular NHS surgeries and appointments and the waiting times?
Oh, okay. I guess, Gavin, that would be for you as well, but.
Well, I think it would be really unkind to ask Rob to answer that one.
Well, we can have.
So
Rob will have an opinion, I'm sure.
So I'll do this one as long as I don't have to answer a question on flood defences or something else. But, so it's had a big impact, to be honest. I mean, a lot of our services we have maintained throughout COVID. So, you know, emergency services, emergency surgery, quite a lot of our cancer activity we have been able to maintain. But routine planned treatments like joint replacements, those sorts of things, we've not been able to do. So I think there's a couple of things. One, we've accrued a backlog of patients waiting, and so I'll give you an example. Prior to COVID, we would never have patients waiting over 52 weeks from referral to treatment. That's a sort of line in the sand. I mean, clearly a lot of people wait far less than that, but that was the sort of line in the sand. Yeah. As of the end of last month, I think we've got about 280 now, and that will I think keep going up, because the difficulty is that not only we've got a backlog to recover, but also our capacity is reduced as well for routine services. And it's reduced in two ways. One, some of the space that we would ordinarily use for, say, operations, like operating theatres, we've still got assigned as ITU capacity, intensive care beds. Now, there's a debate about, could we start to bring that number down? And I think we are doing that. But back to our earlier conversation about second waves, we've also got to be ready to step it back up again. But the other thing that affects our capacity is, our clinical teams are slower because of the PPE requirements. Simple things. Someone was saying to me the other day about an ultrasound session. So in an average, it's a common diagnostic procedure. We could normally do maybe 6 patients in a session, but because of the social distancing stuff and PPE, we can only do maybe 5. So that's a if you scale that up, that's a significant reduction. Maybe 10-15% of our capacity. So we're going to have some reduced capacity going forward, and obviously what we'll want to do is to prioritise that capacity for people with cancer and with people with time critical conditions. So I do think, we need to be honest with the public that the recovery will take time.
That's the most important thing, Gavin. And again, I sound like I'm your biggest fan, but I am a great fan of yours, because I think we just have to be that honest. And I think the fact again is that we are in a crisis situation, and we must all recognise that it can't be as it is normally. But I think one of the things that, and I've said this before, I think, Sophie, I still would say people, if they have anything that they have any concerns about, they still can go to GPs, and the GPs can still refer them to the hospitals as well.
That's a really, really important point. And one of the worrying things we saw at the beginning of COVID was our cancer. Well, we have a fast track process. So if you're worried about cancer and you go see your GP, you're guaranteed to be seen within 2 weeks, and the treatment process starts very rapidly. But even those fast track referrals, we saw a big drop. They maybe dropped to about 1/3 of their normal level. So at the moment, they're back up to about maybe 70% of their normal level. So, I think the point you've just made is really important. If you're worried about something, then go and see your GP, and we'll see you, and we'll make sure that you're looked after. But our priority inevitably will be on those sorts of cases. So I think. It's easy to talk about people waiting for routine surgery, but these are people with significant disability as a result of, if you're waiting for a hip replacement, you're in pain, you can't sleep at night. So it's not trivial at all. I mean, it really matters to those people, but I think it's just a practical reality that we are going to have to focus our capacity in that way. But just to reassure people, though, is I mean, people think that we run a waiting list. You know, I'm on the list, and eventually it'll be my turn. We're perhaps we're a bit more active than that. We do look at we do review the waiting list and the clinical condition of patients. We have a dialogue with their GP, and clearly we bring people forward more rapidly dependent upon clinical need. So if you're worried that your operation is postponed, it is worth having that conversation perhaps with your GP, and whether that's something we ought to think about.
Yeah.
But it's going to take a while. It is.
And I know, you know, my GP's been great. I've had a couple of occasions where I've needed to contact them and have been triaged at the beginning, and then I've actually, you know, had telephone conversation with my doctor. And in a case where the diagnosis couldn't be made over the phone, I was able to go and see. I had my temperature checked before I went, you know, so there's all these precautions. Rob, do you have any comments on this at all?
Yeah, just thank you for updating us, Gavin, on that. All that, you know, it's. I just want to thank you and all your colleagues for everything you've done during this crisis. It's truly amazing, and obviously before as well. But thank you all for everything you do, and all the carers as well. But from my side of things, and the people I speak to, and residents I speak to, and friends and family, I think one of the biggest concerns I've got about, you know, the routine kind of treatments and triaging and going to see healthcare professionals is a lot of people are quite scared to engage and particularly go to hospital.
Yeah.
Because you know, that a lot of people are quite frightened. I spoke to someone who recently was in the A&E department, and he said that people were literally like looking around all the time and felt quite vulnerable. And I do have grave concerns about people's, you know, perception of engaging in healthcare, and also you know, ultimately it's a behaviour issue, isn't it? You know, people have changed. Our lives have changed so much, and I'm just really hope that people really think, like you said, Amanda, just try and, you know, get in touch with your local GP, you know, engage with the right healthcare at the right time if you need it, because you know, Gavin and his colleagues will do everything they can to make you better and keep you safe, and the biggest thing for me is that people, you know, try and get back into that mentality that, you know, you're not a burden if you go and ask for help. You're not in any, hopefully not in any danger. You know, all the mitigations are in there to help you and stay safe, and that's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, it's so right what you're saying. And I mentioned my auntie before. She has been self-isolating. You know, she chose to self-isolate, and now she's because she's got COPD, and she's just having so much trouble actually getting herself forward. And she said she wouldn't go to the doctor. She's not been out, you know, and that's not healthy either, I have to say. I've been trying to support her to get out, but it's very, very complicated times. But let's have another question, Sophie, if you may.
As the government funding is not a bottomless pot, what can we all do to support the economy?
Oh, well, I'm going shopping. Rob, what about yourself on this?
Yeah, I actually went shopping yesterday for the first time in a long time, where I've actually gone out and goes, I'm going to go shopping. And I went to the market hall in the city, the marketplace, and went in, and I was greeted straight away by a member of staff who was, you know, giving you directions around the market hall. I went to all the local shops, had a really good chat with all the store holders. A lot of them know me really, really well because I love to shop in the market hall. It reminds me when I was a little kid, when I used to go in and get my sweets and go see the butchers that are still there now.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed it. And I spoke to them, and they were happy to be back. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure, especially on small business owners. And I'm one as well. I've got my own business, and there is a lot of pressure and a lot of concern about the sustainability of the economy. You know, we have to be honest. We're going to be racking up huge debts on the national debt. I believe we spent, is it £360 billion on the COVID response? That's a lot of money, and a lot of people are really concerned. I think some of the things that the Chancellor has done with the VAT, you know, if we might discuss it later on, but you know, things like that. You know, I think it's really important that we actually take the opportunity, you know, now to look at the tax code, look at how we help and support smaller businesses, because those smaller businesses, they may grow into the big businesses in the next 10, 20 years. And, you know, now is the time when a lot of people are under a lot of pressure, and they're looking to the future, and we need to assure them as a country, and the government needs to do their bit, and I think they are trying to do their bit. But ultimately, from the person on the street, let's shop local. Let's think about how we spend the money. I think a lot of people are starting to change the way that they view and shop. I speak to a lot of people, and so many people are saying, let's support local businesses. We did it in Chaddesden. You were there, Amanda, at the Wilmot Arms, and we went around as many stores in Chaddesden as we can and promoted local business. And I think that's the way that we support businesses, especially locally.
And I think you make a really good point, actually, Rob, as well. I mean, one of the things that comes under my portfolio is around research and development, and innovation. And it's not just about startups, it's about scale-ups as well. And we need to be making sure that we're supporting the economy by enabling, businesses to get bigger. But it's not without its challenges at all. Gavin, what do you think we should be doing about the economy?
Well, I mean, the economic impact of COVID, I think, is huge, and I think we're probably only really just waking up to that. I think I don't know. I mean, I think the government's got a really difficult task, because on the one hand, they have a responsibility to protect the public and from a safety perspective, but on the other hand, we've got to keep moving forward as a society. So I think it's an incredibly difficult balance to strike. I think the comments you make about the local economy. I mean, I'm conscious that my organisation, we spend £850 million a year, and I think clearly a lot of that is on wages. So hopefully that's supporting the local economy in terms of people. But I think one of the things that we need to think more about is how do we make sure that the rest of what we spend, how do we try and spend as much of that as possible here in this part of the world. We're interested this week at our public board on Tuesday. We published a new strategy for the organisation for the next 5 years, and one of the things we say in that is exactly that, really, that we recognise that not only do we provide healthcare, but we're also an important part of the local economy, and if we can behave in a certain way that supports the local economy, we ought to.
I think that's a really good point, and I think Matt and myself were talking about this a couple of weeks ago in terms of, like, as an example, holidays abroad. It's no bad thing, actually, to stay in this country and spend the money in this country. I mean, it's I'm not saying don't go, because there's nothing nicer than going away, and I can just imagine sipping a sangria by the side of the sea. But in actual fact, my plan is to stay in the UK this year, actually. And that's no bad thing either. And I just think everything it's all around trying to boost the economy, and it's a real challenge. We saw, I think it was in the papers this week, around offices being empty, not being used, and I think this is why we need to be encouraging people to get back into the workplace if it's safe to do so. Because that, as an example, I go to work, I was down in London, that in itself involves spending some money. I stop for a coffee on the way, as an example, and then you buy some lunch. And all of that is the ways that we boost the economy, I guess. And we're Sophie, we're going back next week, aren't we, into the office?
We are, yeah. And it's quite big for everybody to be spaced out and things like that. And I think people working from home has its benefits, but I think people also like being around people. Lots of people don't get on with working at home as well, and they like to be around people and that sort of work and home balance.
Yeah, so that's what we're trying to do, is do that balance, isn't it? Work from home, but also work in the office as well. So we're just, and it's certainly challenging. Rob, what about what's the council doing at the minute in terms of working?
So that the council are supporting as many businesses as possible. The last amount of money that I saw for the interruption grants and such like that the government are helping as well with was around about £33 million. It may have gone up since then, but that's been really, really important to support businesses. But the council's also in a bit of a situation where that we retain a lot of the business rates in the city. So if there's, as Gavin says, and I agree with him, that the impact on the economy is going to be quite quite large, and it's going to change the economy in quite many ways. The city council, a lot of their funding comes from business rates. So if there's a lot of businesses, for example, closing, I know that the company Into is in financial difficulty.
Yeah.
Could we have a lot of businesses shut down, closed down, or are a lot of businesses actually going to change the way that they work? So, for example, like John Lewis, they may do a lot. I'm sure I saw figures recently that 70% of their sales were online recently, and and how will that impact the high street? And because they won't be paying business rates, that may affect frontline services in the future, and the financial sustainability of local authorities. And I'm afraid we're going to have to keep coming to the government as local authorities and saying these are the risks. What can we do to mitigate the risks moving forward and working together? And I really hope that the chancellors will listen.
And as you probably know, we have a recovery plan meeting every fortnight where you've got lots of different organisations. Like last week we had John Falkin from Marketing Derby. The LEP representation there. You've got Rolls-Royce. Lots of different people. And I think the thing that strikes me that we're doing in Derby, and I suspect is happening in lots of other cities as well, but we are all working together. That's how I feel. Is that we're all, we've got each other's back. We're trying to make sure that we do sensibly support all the economy and the council. Those the CBILS, the money that has been given out, these interruption loans, has been amazingly helpful, I think.
I think the biggest thing for me would be removing the barriers sometimes. So when we're all working together, whatever organisations are working together, it's removed a hell of a lot of barriers where people before would have been working maybe in silos and working in their own little areas and may have been interacting with each other. But now the COVID-19 crisis has brought so many people together and removed so many barriers. I've got so many more contacts, having, been involved in this with so many people, and I've been working with Carl a lot. He's been heading up the hub with Helen and many other people, and it has removed a lot of barriers, and that has been a positive, but it's obviously been a challenging time as well.
Yeah, Carl's been amazing. Running that hub has been fantastic, and hopefully he'll be back next week as well. And hopefully, he's just great. I say every week I love Carl. Carl, if you can hear me, I love you. I think you're amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, we all love Carl.
Can we have the next question, because I can't believe it's 22 already, actually.
Yeah. So I think we've done all right with just us lot. Do you think the flood defence funding will help protect low-lying properties in Derby?
Oh, Gavin, you said you wanted the flood question.
Oh dear, oh dear.
Yeah, Rob, a flood question.
Yeah.
Let's do you first, and then we can.
Yeah. I'm sure the residents of Darley Abbey and Chester Green will feel reassured that the government have invested the money into our City, Our River project. It was certainly needed. If you remember the floods at the beginning of the year, I know it feels like a long time ago now, but it was. I was worried for quite a long time. I was checking the environmental agency's charts pretty much hourly, and at one point, the flat that I live in was in the amber zone for quite some time, and it was really quite concerning. But Darley Abbey and Chester Green and the city centre, I think the flood defences have already gone in. Certainly helped them, but as a Chaddesden Ward councillor, the next phases are key to ensure that the city has those flood defences for all the areas of the city. But I would like to say that the OCOR project, it's not just about the flood defences. This project is an opportunity to bring economic growth to the city as well, and unlock areas to help with housing in the city centre, just for one example. But I'd also like to say on a personal note, I went for a walk around Parker's Peace area near City Road recently. The line of the old Roman fort has been highlighted with some of the works that's gone off. And it really was pleasant to see that Derby's heritage has been highlighted as part of this project. So for me, yes, it will. Properties and businesses will have better protection from flooding, and there is still more to do.
Yeah, there is, and I think you're right. It's all about working with the heritage as well. Some of the flood defence we have, it's really quite they complement, the scenery. It's just reminded me. You said something really important. It's the fear of years ago. I used to live at the back of the Trent, probably about 25 years ago, And there was a situation where it just kept getting higher and higher.
Mm.
And we'd all got sandbags by our door because it was, so scary to think that it was going to come into the house. And recently, the drains got blocked around here. And I knew I was in trouble because the water started coming up. And then I saw a duck going by side of the road. And I thought, that's not good, as this duck's sort of swimming along. And that was a point where I thought, right, I need to get some sandbag. But it is genuinely scary because it's your home.
Yeah.
And they're incredibly, incredibly destructive. I remember talking to James Lewis, from Bamford when he was flooded, and we went in, didn't we? Were you with me, Sophie? We went to have a look at the devastation and the auction.
No, I think that was me at the time.
It was Miles actually came with me, and it was really, just devastating to see the destruction. Gavin, have you ever sort of faced any sort of flooding situations or?
No, I don't think. I mean, we're sort of lucky up here at Royal Derby because we're up top of a hill. So no, I've not. No, but I mean, but you're right. I mean, it is devastating, isn't it? And I think it's hard to feel confident about about the future if you're worried about your most valuable asset being destroyed.
Oh, great. That's so good news for the city. And OCOR, Rob,
Our city, our river.
Fantastic, thank you.
And hopefully we'll get some more funding for it soon.
Yeah, well, we've had an announcement this week, as you know, so which is great news, and
That's
it's
great
certainly certainly high on the agenda that we need to keep on making sure we are fortifying those defences. So, shall we have the next question?
Yes, so we've got, should there be harsher punishments for those that assault our key workers?
Oh, well, I can say, Gavin, did you hear that? So harsher punishments for our people who assault our key workers. Has it been a problem for you at all, Gavin?
Not specifically. I mean, we do. I mean, we do have occasions where staff are assaulted by members of the public, and clearly we take a. Yeah, no. It does happen. I mean, sometimes it can be associated with. If somebody is under the influence of drugs or alcohol, or even even some of our elderly patients with dementia, there can be different circumstances, but there can also be situations where members of the public behave in ways which I think are quite can be shocking, and obviously we get good support from. Our colleagues in the police, and we take a very dim view of that as a trust. In terms of whether there should be tougher sanctions. I mean, trying to be rational about it. I think the law should apply evenly to all people. But just speaking personally for a minute, I would probably say yes. Just because I think it's not just healthcare staff, but it's people in the emergency services, people working in key roles. I mean, I think people ought to be able to go about their work and be free from abuse and assault.
Has it in the hospitals? Because I noticed when we go, there's a zero tolerance in terms of being aggressive or insulting towards staff. Has it diminished over the years? Hopefully, or not.
I think it. I mean, I wouldn't want to portray this as being a kind of this is a sort of growing issue,
No.
but it is present. And there are clearly obvious areas that you could think of, like the emergency department, where clearly
yes,
the circumstances are such that can happen. So, but I think it's really important that we don't accept it. I mean, I think you might say, well, does that is that not just part of life in an A&E department? And I think the answer's got to be no. I think we mustn't accept that, and so we do have a dim view, and I think we would go as far as, if somebody's unable to behave in an appropriate way, in a reasonable way, then we will exclude them from the hospital, and we will withdraw treatment, and that's a very serious thing for us to do, because we're here to save lives, but there is a limit, and we do have to protect our staff.
I remember, Rob, I went out with the refuse collectors, as you saw probably earlier, a couple of weeks ago. And my understanding is that they actually, and we're talking key workers here, because key workers aren't just in the NHS, as we know, although they do a fantastic job, but it's key workers in lots of different places. And, refuse collection was absolutely crucial. And I was astounded to hear that they were receiving abuse. It just doesn't seem right to me, but I don't know what your thoughts are, Rob.
Yeah, so on the point about the refuse collectors, Jonathan, who's been on here, who was on here last week, Amanda, he's the cabinet member responsible for that area of the city council's delivery, and some of the things he tells me, it's just heartbreaking, because these people are going out there. I mean, during the height of the pandemic, they were still going out there collecting people's bins, and you just think to yourself, why would people treat people like that with such low, with such disrespect for start, and why would they do it? So, back onto the question: should there be harsher punishments for those who assault key workers? Yes, and there are laws that protect some key workers. For example, the Emergency Workers Obstruction Act 2006 and the Assaults and Emergency Workers Offences Act 2018. Should and could these be rolled out to protect key workers? Absolutely, yes, they should. And potentially, the COVID-19 Act 2020 could have picked it up and rolled it out to, to protect key workers as well. I know it was a rush, not a rush, but it was a key bit of legislation that had to go through, and hindsight's 2020, isn't it? As the leader of the opposition found out recently. But though with all laws, they need to be consistently enforced and policed by our ever-stretched police forces, and the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, needs to ensure they prosecute where possible anyone who would fall foul of the existing laws, and the courts need to hand out the appropriate sentences that fit any crimes. We all know that the institutions that I've just said are under a lot of pressure, as is the prison system. But I feel with every fibre of me that the first duty of any government or state is to protect its citizens or subjects, no matter who they are, without fear or favour. And I feel as a country we must have the backs of those that commit their lives and futures to protect, serve and heal our communities. And we must protect them from those that choose to break the law. Maybe that's an old-fashioned way of viewing things, but I really do think that people need reassurance at this time. We must back our key workers. They've just done so much for us.
I just think, as well, Rob, that actually, the key workers have done so much. That as decent human beings, we should remember that. And if we feel inclined in any way to give any of these key workers, or indeed just other fellow people, abuse, it can't be right. It just doesn't feel right.
So Amanda, me and you went to see the Wilmot Arms, like I discussed earlier.
Yeah.
And if you remember, Sean and Sophie, the biggest thing that they said was, please be patient with how things are going to be. And it's just common decency. It's just respect. People are trying to get on with their lives, whether they're key workers, whether they're people running pubs, or whether they're people running your local corner shop. Just please be respectful. I will be honest, when I did my shopping yesterday, a guy got really close to me, and he was just trying to talk to me about something. I genuinely don't know what he wanted to say, but I was like, excuse me, can you just give me some space, please? And I just think we need to be a little bit more patient with each other as well, and a bit more considerate about each other's spaces.
Definitely. I think, Rob, that's a really important point. And certainly as an example in Parliament, there are signs all over the place saying you have every right to tell somebody if they're invading your space. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you feel uncomfortable, and it's a life thing, really. If something doesn't feel right, or you don't feel comfortable, I think we should be able to say that to people. So no, point really, really well made. Thank you, Rob. Sophie, we've probably got time for one more question. I can't believe it's 10 to. Good minute. Sophie, you're on mute.
Sorry, someone was going around with a Hoover.
Not you.
Do you think making face masks compulsory in shops is needed?
Oh, well, Rob, let's come to you. Then I'll come to you, Gavin.
Well, I have my new mask.
Oh.
Oh, that's very nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where's that from then?
So I went down for a meeting at the Age UK Centre this week, and whilst I was there, Di Cliff, who's been absolutely amazing, and Wendy Lambert, who's a local resident in Chaddesden, and a group called A Stitch From Me to You. They've made over 4,000 of these kinds of masks for the local community, not just in Derby, but around the county, because I does work in Derby and around the county. But I also understand that that group has also made scrubs for the NHS. So no doubt that they were really well received, and there's been so, I don't want to call it a cottage industry because I don't know, but it is that people with sewing machines that want to help people, and these people have got amazing skills. I mean, I couldn't. That's handmade. That is handmade. I could never. I couldn't do that myself. No way. No. But these people have spent their time to do these sorts of things. But I have to again be honest. So, do I think the masks are needed? Yeah, the answer is probably yeah, they are. And anything that defeats this awful virus is a good thing to me. We've got to do everything we can and listen to the advice, like you said earlier, Amanda. However, many people I've spoken to are saying things like, "This is a bit late in the day," or "Why now?" And I have to say, from my point of view, it does seem inconsistent. And why is this coming in July? Maybe you can. I'm not an expert in these things, but a lot of people are saying those things to me, and I have to be honest.
I suppose I'm going to come to you, Gavin, because you might be able to give us an insight. And there's a few things that you say in that, Rob. But I guess the situation is a constantly changing situation. And my understanding is one of the things that certainly the masks will do is prohibit, hopefully, that second spike. And I think that's one of the reasons. And I think there's two things. I think we're wanting to get people back to work, back into offices, back onto transport. And not only does it prevent the virus from spreading, because that's what it does, it inhibits it just to the person, but I think it's making people feel safer as well. So it's a twofold thing on that. But Gavin, you might be able to give us an insight into.
Yeah, well, I've just got a boring old surgical mask. But what I have got, which is pretty groovy, is I've got like a little knitted thing. Which so that it doesn't the elastic doesn't have to go behind your ears. You have your little woolly thing at the back, and you've got one.
These are good. I haven't. So I've just got one, but I need to get another one. I've got envy with Rob's. So what does that little knitted thing do, Gavin?
Well, basically, you hook your mask on the buttons, and then it doesn't. You don't have to put it behind your ears. It just sort of goes at the back of your head. I can recommend it.
Where did you get that from?
Well, so it's all part of the support we've had from the public. So we've got lots and lots of this sort of little knitted things, masks, and so people are. I mean, it's exactly what you were saying, Rob. I mean, people have just sat at home and made these things and brought them into the hospital. So I mean, all of my colleagues have got things, because if you've got I'm sure you know, but over the last few weeks, everybody in the hospital. So I've got a mask here. I don't need to wear it now. There's nobody around. But the minute I walk out of my office door, I've got a mask on. Everybody in the hospital is wearing masks. I think the question about should we have been doing this earlier, I think is a really good question, and we've tended to. I mean, certainly, in terms of my organisation, we followed very carefully the guidance from public health. I think there was a lot of debate about the value of masks, and did it encourage people to fiddle with them, and was that worse than not having the mask? And but I think there is emerging evidence that has come from other societies where mask wearing has been more prevalent, to say that actually it has had a benefit. So I think it's back to the discussion we had right at the beginning, which is this balance between keeping the public safe and trying to get the economy going again. So I think I think if wearing a mask enables us to strike a better balance, then I think it's got to be a good thing. I mean, you see stuff about people, I don't want to wear a mask kind of thing. Well, it's a relatively small thing to do, and I think, I think a good way of thinking about it, it's about respecting the people that are around you. It isn't just a selfish thing. It's actually about doing it because it helps to keep other people safe. So I think we should all just get on with it and wear a mask.
And I guess as well, I'm just thinking of the situation you described, Rob, where somebody was close to you. I think we have all now got the message, on the whole, to socially distance. I think we've got used to it. I even find, you know, myself just automatic doing it. I'm going to take my dog out for a walk now, and as soon as he sees somebody coming towards us, he actually lies on the floor, because we've got that used to letting people pass. And he's a puppy, so that's learned behaviour. So he acts in a completely different way now when he sees somebody. But I also think that where the masks are going to be advantageous is that it will help when somebody does invade your space, or does, because if they're getting too close, like somebody did to you, Rob, at least if they're wearing a mask, then it must be inhibiting spread. I'm coming to you, Gavin, for that. Is my understanding correct?
I think it does. I mean, it's not. I mean, the spread of the virus is through droplets, so kind of you know, expelled through the nose and mouth. So clearly, having a face covering potentially absorbs some of those things. But I mean, it's clearly not a guarantee. I mean, even I mean, you know, even the most sophisticated masks we have, FFP3s, are only 95%. You know, secure. I mean, there's a limit to how secure something can be, but I guess this is about tipping the balance of risk. So if you have a face covering, it might not, you know, it doesn't mean you're absolutely 100% protected, but it does tip the balance of risk in your favour.
Yeah.
You know, and indeed in the favour of the people that are around you.
No, that's really, really helpful. Thank you so much. I can't believe we're at the end. I'm just going to come to you for sort of a one-line words of wisdom. But Sophie, first of all, who have we got next week?
Next week we've got Rob Pittham from BBC East Midlands, and James Blake from Youth Hostel Association.
Great. I look forward to that. And hopefully, you know, Rob and Gavin, we'll have you back at some point, because it's been so great to have you. Really great. Sophie, I'm going to go to everybody for words of wisdom. What are your words of wisdom, first of all, for this week?
My words of wisdom is just really, you know, you hear a lot of people saying, you know, our masks don't help that much or whatever, and I would just love to hear their other suggestions, really. I just think that if you can even help a little bit, then you should let's just do it. Let's not moan too much.
Sophie, you're always so wise. Rob, what about your words of wisdom?
Mine are, I think I've already talked about it earlier. I think it's just being patient, slowing down, making sure you're not putting yourself at risk, anyone else at risk, because, you know, just slow down and be patient, because things have changed, and we've always got to be mindful of that.
Oh, thank you very much. Gavin?
I mean, for me, I think you touched on this, Robert. It's about being kind to each other. I think this has been an incredibly stressful time, and I think everybody has experienced COVID in a different way. And, you know, we talked about the economic impacts and the health impacts. You know, there's a lot of people, you know, with a lot of anxiety, under a lot of pressure. So I think, you know, we all need to be a little bit, you know, just a little bit more considerate of people, I think.
Thank you. Mine is just to add to that, actually, and I have said this many times before. I think we need to be kind to ourselves as well. You know, I've spent a lot of time by myself or sat reflecting, and if you're not careful, you can overthink things and you can over-analyse. And actually, I just think we need to be kind to ourselves as well. So that would be my absolutely, be kind to others, but also be kind to yourself as well. We're often our worst enemy, aren't we, on these things?
Yep.
Do you know what? It's been fascinating. I'm so delighted to have seen you all. Thank you so much. It really has been a great pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you.
Fantastic.
All.
Bye.
Bye.